Hi.
Hi, Nezar. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see new faces, recurring faces, CineTalks regulars. Some people we also recruited from, so we have with us Hanan Sayed Waral, who has been a long-time collaborator with us and held a very fascinating social distancing supper club a few weeks ago, where she had us all make dishes inspired by our favorite food and film reference. And I am not going to tell you what I made, what I resorted to because of my very lazy cooking skills. But Nizar was one of the participants as well, and had a whole array inspired by Almodovar. So I'm happy to see some people who had joined that. And thank you, Hanan, for putting it together. How was that experience for you?
Oh, it was amazing. The cinematic bites, the food and film was really by far the most enjoyable dinner. We really inspired me to go watch more movies, so that's been good. And inspired me to join you tonight. But I haven't managed to download my background yet.
Were you able to download the image?
No, I'm working on it, so I'll do it as we go.
It's a Dropbox link, and it should just have a direct download option on the top left. No, top right.
How are you, Luz?
Good. How are you, Hanan? I haven't seen you so long.
Oh yeah, I found it.
All right, we're just going to do a few more minutes on if anybody needs help with the background, with the virtual background, we'll walk you through that, do some house rules, and then we'll jump right into it.
Trying to do the same.
Luz, do you want to share screen and just show how it's done?
Yeah, I downloaded it, but then what do I do with it?
Okay, can you see my screen at the moment?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you go here to the bottom menu, it says one second. It says stop. Where it says stop video. Do you see where my mouse is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just here it says choose virtual background. If you click that, it will give you a pop-up.
Yeah, but I'm trying to link the background to this, so I'm not virtual background. It's not giving me the Cinema Akil background.
So
Okay,
you have to add it.
When you download the background, download it on your desktop, and then once you open this, you can just find the image wherever you saved it.
On my desktop, okay, general.
Okay.
I think I downloaded it on my Dropbox, but how do I get from the Dropbox to here?
Exactly.
I know that you need to download it directly onto your laptop.
I did this on my, desktop on my laptop, but I cannot get it from the laptop to apply it.
It's easier if you download it somewhere, like the downloads folder, somewhere that it's easy for you to find, so that once this window pops up, you can just find it wherever you saved it.
All right.
Where do I download it from? Where is the image? So I'll link it here for you. We sent it on the initial email. Let me just link it here for you.
I did it before.
There on the initial email? Okay.
Then I lost track of it. I did it before, but
I'll put it here. Don't worry. Well, let me just admit other people that are waiting. Okay, here it is. So I'm going to share my screen again very fast. Sorry, just to show you quickly. So once you open the link, it should open another window.
okay.
Can you see my window at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then here, well, because this is my own Dropbox, it doesn't really give me the option, but over here there should be an option that says download.
Yeah, so I did that and saved it onto desktop. Then I go, and you go to virtual background, stop video.
The name of the file is, if it helps, the name of the file is background for website. So maybe you can search for it that way.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yes. Yeah. Choose virtual background. Click on the plus, then.
Yes, the plus. That was the bit.
Yeah, that was it, exactly. Now we are certified Cinema Akil backgrounds.
Yeah. Amazing.
Well, we're getting closer and closer to hopefully seeing you whenever you're ready to seeing you in person. But we do intend to keep these CineTalks going. I know people are at different stages of getting out, or choosing to do different things, and we've really had a very strong response and an affinity to these conversations, irrespective of where we are, and we really love the intimacy of the way that this has brought us together, because sometimes not everybody gets to be at a space, not everybody gets to join a conversation, and this really has been something that we're happy to continue. So even as we're working, I'm sure you've heard the news. I mean, we have people joining us from Abu Dhabi, from Tanzania. We have participants from India. We have people from all over. But if you do live in the UAE, you probably heard the news that cinemas are now allowed to reopen. I wanted to just address this. For us at Cinema Akil, the news came abruptly. We'd been setting up the space to make sure that all of our safety measures are in place, and we're still working on making sure that we get it to beyond the regulatory expectation of what it takes to open up the cinema, and we will let you know as soon as we're ready to get back into the swing of things. And obviously happy to see you there, and happy to see you here, and wherever you're ready to join us. So that's where we're at as a cinema space. Without further ado, I really want to start off by thanking Professor Nezar Andary, who has been very generous with his time and knowledge throughout the journey of Cinema Akil, as both a film scholar, aficionado, a writer, and a strong supporter of community projects like Cinema Akil, even before we had our own space. Nezar Andary received his bachelor's from Columbia University and his PhD from UCLA. And to sum up, Nezar is passionate about fusion and is an accomplished academic, writer, filmmaker, and curator. As a film producer and director, Andary's feature documentary entitled Unlocking Doors of Cinema pays respect to an auteur premiered at the Cairo International Film Festival in 2019. Andary has simultaneously, over the last 4 years, produced over 10 documentary shorts for Arab Film Studio that have screened in over 50 festivals. He holds the position of Associate Professor at Zayed University, and his most recent publications include a work on Anthony Shadid, Homage to Anthony Shadid, Literature of a Journalist, as well as a study on Ibn Khaldun and contemporary culture and theater entitled Confronting the Symbol of the Intellectual, which is a very fitting parallel to our conversation tonight. Andary is the co-editor of book series Focus on Arab Cinema for Palgrave Macmillan, and has recently published a book entitled Cinema of Muhammad Malas, Visions of a Syrian Auteur, who was actually here in the UAE on the jury of the Sharjah Film Platform most recently. Andary has curated various screenings in the UAE over the last 15 years and currently holds the position of Artistic Director of Al Sidr Environmental Film Festival in Abu Dhabi. With his own production, Memories of Childhood, a theatrical performance, he introduced the concept of documentary theater to the United Arab Emirates. Andary's hope for the future is to continue to inspire and be inspired to create. And we're, I guess, in the throes of those hopes, and hopefully a stepping stone into that future. So thank you again, Nezar, for doing this, and thank you for being with us. And I'm thrilled for you to lead this conversation on Alain René's My Uncle from America.
Thank you. First, a big thank you to Cinema Akil for being there, for being a place. It's another home, and cinema means a lot to us. It's a place that we remember family, a place that we remember memories. And like the film that we watched, some of the heroes, every day when we do anything, images from the cinema are there, and our most intimate moments, our fears, and so much. So thank you for creating Cinema Aqil for many reasons. And it became a place for us to even just go to Dubai just to see a film. Last time was for the Sudani film, You Will Die at 20. Thank you for your work, Buthaina, Luz, Momo, and so many other people that are part of Cinema Aqil. Yeah, I just want to say hello to my mom if she's watching. It's not an easy time for any of us. And yeah, I wish all of you well. Thank you for making the decision to do, I don't know if this is your first Zoom or you've done hundreds of Zoom, but all the decisions we make in this time, at least for me, means something. So thank you. Big thank you to everyone, because cinema is something sacred. It is when lights go out and it's dark that we actually see lights inside of ourselves. And it just means a lot to me, and it's meant a lot to me my whole life. Okay, that's a very serious note. I'd like to begin with a little performance here that we can all do. I want to rock the house. I want to do something a little bit crazy. So if we can share the PowerPoint.
Sure.
It's a little game when I do theater. In order for the actors and myself and everyone to get ready, I like to get the energy going. And so I want us to get our energy going and also get some energy out there. And usually what I do before the performance is I have everyone whisper and hold hands like this and say, and whisper, energy, 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 and get louder and louder and louder and louder. So what I want us to do is to whisper cinema and then whisper it a little bit louder and louder and louder and louder until everyone in the world can hear cinema. So let's see how loud we can scream. Now, if you have people you don't want to bother, okay, but let's try to let the world hear cinema. So are we ready? Is everyone ready?
1 second, I need to, it's better, I think, if everybody can unmute themselves, because right now you're all muted.
Yeah, let's all hear each other. Let's hear everybody scream. I just want us all to scream cinema. And you can say cinema bil-Arabi, or what define who we are today. I don't know if I agree, but you can see the events. You can see the Iranian Revolution, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, John Lennon's killed. Does anyone know that image right there? Afghanistan was invaded by the Soviet Union, and all of us know what Afghanistan produced, 9/11, so on and so forth. It's not a history lecture, but I do think it's important to understand what's going on during the time of the film. And we can go on to the next slide. Colonialism hadn't ended. Zimbabwe gets its independence. Things that some of us are addicted to, some of us hate, some of us, I don't know, our relationships to CNN and MTV, but they were created in 79, 80. Also, Pac-Man, I don't know if people remember that. Of course, I was born in 2000, so I don't. Anyway, what were the films? Many films that year. Star Wars, Superman. Ranier's film won the grand prize in Cannes, but the other prize was to the Bob Fosse film, All That Jazz. And the picture on the right is Ranier celebrating in Cannes that year, 1980. Okay, so that's very quickly Alain Ranier. We have the film posters that came out that year. And 1 second. You can see one of the posters calls the film a comedy. I don't know if anyone thought it was a comedy. It definitely is a satire of what it means to be human, a satire of what it meant to be human in France in 1980. You can see one of the posters using sort of a Tintin and actually makes the mouse a character. You can also see perhaps in the poster with the American flag. I mean, why is that? Is there any American character in the film? No, but something about America is quite important, I think, to this film, and it's interesting. It's interesting to analyze that. You can see in the American poster on the right that it's compared to Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, which was a comedy that critiqued capitalism, but with fun. I'm not sure, if how fun this was for us in 2020, but I think at the time in 1980, a critic like Andrew Saris would call it a comedy, which is quite interesting. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Let me just, on what I just said. Am I being clear? Anyone in the chat? If I'm not being clear, if I'm speaking too quickly, just blurt it out. Yeah, let me know, because it's a discussion and I want to get through some of the just core stuff that I want to talk about. So where did we put this film? I mean, for me, I put this film in the genre of film and philosophy, and there's hundreds of them. And quickly, if Luz, we can just go through these like 3 seconds on each one. We have a film in 2010 on Confucius. We have Mantha Diawara, professor at NYU, doing a film on the anthropology or philosopher Jean Rouch, but he's critical of him and stuff like that. So it's not always means just because the philosophers in the film, that means the director loves them. You have a Indian film from South Asia, and in this film you don't see the philosopher, but the famous British philosopher Bertrand Russell made an appearance. And you have an Arab cinema, a film all about Yusuf Shaheen, all done in the Egyptian accent. You have a film that I show still at Zayed University about Hannah Arendt, beautiful film, a great director, Margaret von Trotta, who does films about women intellectuals. Actually, all of her films are women philosophers, I would say, on some level. And then the last one is Richard Linklater, who many of you might know by Boyhood, or the romantic one with Before Sunset, After Sunrise, so on and so forth. But he did a film called Waking Life that is all with an American philosopher and quoting of Foucault and Chomsky and so on and so forth. And the last one is a film by a very radical, not so radical, but experimental filmmaker that took a lot of risks in his life. He did a film on a very fun philosopher, Wittgenstein. Those are just some quick selections. If you want more, please take my email. I can send a whole list of film and philosophy. Okay. This film, and I'll get to my question quickly for a discussion. The first one is going to be focused on who is Henri Le Boré. What do we think about him, really? Well, he is the star philosopher on some level of this film. Do we agree with his philosophy? And we should know that, I mean, he was a medical doctor who created different medicines. I don't want to go into the whole history, but he was responsible for helping to create certain medicines for schizophrenia. He was an anesthesiologist. He also was a behavioralist. And then as he got older, in the 60s, he started writing more books about society. He wasn't afraid to write about his theories of society. In fact, he wrote a book on the city, saying the city is a secretion that we have to be wary of, because it'll create disease. And I found that in my research for this talk. I found that sort of fascinating, his whole book called On the City. He was, let's say, influenced by the 68 movement. He was helping those students. In his books, he would quote Karl Marx, but he would always say, Marx was right, but he didn't have the solutions. Does Labarite in this film have solutions for how we're supposed to act? It's a question we're going to think about. If we can go to the next slides. These are some of his books, just so you have an idea. What I wanted to do quickly is, if we can just go slide quickly, just so, I don't know how many of you watched the film or watched it slow, but for me, I had to go back and really think about what the hell is this guy saying, right? And so what I did for you guys, and for myself, to sort of grapple this film, is to sort of go over some of the big themes. So, what are the four behaviors? Consumption, gratification, flight, and fight. And then the one that takes over the film, inhibition, right? That leads to our anxiety. If we can go to the next slide, I'll go through this quickly. Where this is a massive quote in the film. And the film ends with this, that this is the fundamental basis for all human behavior, is dominance, is power. Those of you who went to grad school, you can see echoes of Foucault and these different French theorists that power dominates who we are, is the basis for human motivation. Let's go to the next slide. Don't read all of this. Everyone hates someone who reads from a PowerPoint, but that language is one of the things that hides this domination, our problems, and it miscommunicates things quickly, right? Next slide. This inhibition of action, right, leads to biological problems. Remember Jean and René, right? They both are stuck in the corporate cage, and because of that, perhaps they suffer psychosomatic problems, right? Perhaps. Next slide. Now, Henri Labouré, we don't want to. He wasn't Freudian, even though for some of you it might go, oh, that sounds like Freud. He wanted to differentiate himself. He belongs to many people that wanted to sort of update Freud. Like, if those of you who are interested in psychology, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. One of my favorite is Existential Psychotherapy, Irving Yalom, great novelist and psychotherapist, and Erik Erikson, Studies of Psychology and Character. But they were all interested in the unconscious, right? And I know this from extra research. Labouré wanted to move away from just having it be connected to sexual identity and stuff like that of Freud. He believed the repressed content came from language and pressure and this idea of dominance. If we can go to the next slide. You can see here the idea that this inhibition, this problem that people have with personality, when this happens, and he says, when a single brick is removed, it creates anxiety. And it's this inability to act, inability to know what to do. And you can see this very powerful quote that leads to genocide, war, groups, so on and so forth. If we can go to the next slide. This is the quote that ends the film. And for me, it shows you who Labouré is as a philosopher, as a thinker, as a medical man. He's sort of like a Jared Diamond, perhaps, right? If we don't know, if we're unaware of our brain, whether we believe we're aggressive people that want to dominate or not, if we're unaware of this, we're going to continue in our ways, and we're not going to change. And Labouré was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize as part of a group of physicians who were trying to stop nuclear war, right? And that's the man who he is. However, the question for the group, if we can go to the next slide, how do we feel about this? I mean, all of you watched the film, I hope. I've tried to review quickly some of his things, too quickly, and I'm a reductionist, perhaps of the reductionist. What do you guys feel about Labourè's theories? So let's stop here and have some debate about whether we agree or disagree.
We have David with his hand up, so I'm gonna unmute you, David Hirsch.
Hello, David.
No, sorry, that was a mistake. Sorry.
Oh. Hello, David. Anyway.
Hi.
So anybody else?
Did people feel that he's reductionist? That life isn't about dominance? Did people feel that he's outdated? Like, who is this Labouré character that comes in the film? he's sort of, I start with him. I don't mean that he's the most important, but I think in order to enter in this film, it's also to sort of grasp what Labyrinth stands for. Is he too Darwinian, right? Is he too, in the end, how did you take it? Did you feel that, like, that, you know, he was abusive to, I mean, I watched this film and people are like, wow, why is he abusing the animals, right? Can we reduce to animals, right? Can studies of the human existence be reduced to what animals do, like mice?
I mean that's sort of what he was doing, or what he was saying. I felt he was very simplistic in a way. So I guess you're calling that reductionist, but I felt like, yeah, he totally brought us down to a very base level. And seeing the film now in this current time, you felt like, okay, so it's anxiety and then dominance, and then what? Like eventually dominance means somebody's gotta give or die or go away. So I think it created a bit more anxiety. I felt it was a little unresolved.
Yeah, you're totally right. It's not, the filmmaker, let's say, doesn't resolve Labyrinth's theories, and I think that's a great point. Other opinions on this science philosopher. I mean, it's refreshing though that a filmmaker would allow this space to interact with the scientist. But I think it's, some of his theories really echoed strongly in me. I really, I thought they really connected to the two characters, the two male characters specifically. But other comments about Labyrinth or ideas. Yeah.
Nayiri?
Yeah, thank you. I found his theories and the link with the film, frankly, a bit difficult to follow. And I was hoping that today we'll get perhaps a better understanding of the link. And when I read reviews about the film, one of the things that I came across, more than one critique mentioned that this is a film that one has to watch more than once to be able to better understand it. And so I thought today's discussion will help me understand it better. But separately from that, my personal view is I tend to disagree that we are all driven by dominance and that we are only driven by dominance or domination. But I do agree with other things that came up in the film about how our conduct and behavior and reactions are dictated by the unconscious. And at one point, when he speaks about the various levels of the brain, the reptile and the mammal, he says that, and I found it fascinating, that although we come up with rational and conscious reasons to act in a certain way, in fact, everything is governed by the unconscious. And he's not the first psychologist to say that, but that's one idea that fascinates me, and I guess that's all what psychology and psychoanalysis is about. So in that respect, I found the film actually quite novel. It was a novelty for me. I found it hard to follow. I found it quite fascinating for many reasons, and when I was reading more about Alain Resnais, because it's not a director that I'm familiar with, I read that he had started with documentaries and then shifted to feature films, and so I thought probably that is clear, the influence of documentary shows in this film. So there's a lot to talk about. This is just briefly some of my views on the film.
No, I mean, I think that's why I felt like in preparing something today, I tried to take a lot of the quotes from his theories that are written in the film, actually. But I think one thing that I found a solution that he says, there's one quote that stuck with me where Labyrinth says, we are others. We need others. And so it's in that realization that we come to terms with our desire for dominance, to hold on to something. And dominance might be the incorrect translation from the French. It might be control, especially we might, I mean, what do we need now? I think, what do I need every day? I feel I need more control. That's why, we have moments of OCD more than ever before. And I think there's something connected to that. But so for me, that could have been the solution that I found within as I tried to go back and look at Labourie's theories in the film. Other comments about Labourie's, but I think you're right, Nairi, that it wasn't always easy to follow, and but I think what helped it out is following the characters, which we can move to next, I think is important. But let's first, any more discussion on Labourie, any other things? Yeah.
And I did something, sorry, I lost the sign where I can raise my hand. I don't see it anymore.
Okay, I saw you.
Yeah. I think also he's arguing about the fact, questioning the choices that the characters have in terms of the limitation and conditioning we all, the characters are subjected to by society. And this conditioning of from starting from what to do and what to don't do to the norms, to the concepts, and to the fundamentals in our choices. And speaking about documentary, the approach is I felt the approach, now seeing it in 2020, I can see it as a docudrama more of, because he is used in some of his movies to very heavy texts, to deal with heavy text, and he's dealing with them in his approach in a very straightforward manner, using the voiceover as if we are all the characters become some sort of the rats in this laboratory that is life, and observing them. So we see a scene where they're acting, and then the commentary or the analysis that come to reflect on and meditate on the situation and the characters' choices and their choices in this respect.
Yeah, no, great points. Other comments? Yes, Gino.
First of all, thank you for organizing this session, and the choice of the movie was amazing as well. It reminded us how much we miss La Nouvelle Vague with the great directors of French movies, from Godard to to Mal to Valda, to all these great directors, because they used to have sense when watching their movies. So what I did like,
Wait.
You know, 1 second. There you go.
Okay. You're muted.
No, there you go.
Since the beginning?
Yes.
Since the beginning, I was muted?
No, we heard you. It's just the last little bit.
Okay. So, about Labourie, I really liked when he spoke about death. He said that when you die, you don't die alone. You die with the ideas. You die with the people you met in your life. You die with the experience, with all the interaction you have done. So you're not lonely in this life. You're not an individual. You're a sum of everything, of all the experience you get from this life, the people you interact with them. So you're just a piece of a puzzle. We're animals, and and this is what makes his philosophy so different than others. And as well, as Nairi said, definitely the movie needs to be watched twice, because it's so deep in its philosophy. And I just watched it. It's still in my mind. I just finished the movie half an hour ago. I'm still thinking about it. It needs time to capture all the information. and that's it. So that's my view till now. We will continue the discussion, and thank you, Nizar, for this beautiful introduction about the movie and all the explanations and this all the slides you prepared, and it was really nice, really amazing.
Thank
It
you.
gives us more insight about cinema.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I do want to just jump in and say that, this particular film, like for a film that is kind of questioning or negotiating the concept of, dominance or control, it really doesn't, it doesn't make any bones about trying to control the sort of didactic nature in which he delivers his questions. It's a very prescriptive presentation of the ideas, the insertion of himself as the sort of dominant a male conceptual framework for the entire interpretive thinking around the ideas or around the vignettes that he's painting. I think is almost like a deliberate sort of prescriptive way of delivering that idea in and of itself. The heteronormativity of it and the way that sort of the control dynamics between the male and female kind of characters play out are also extremely, for me, watching it slightly sort of disturbing and sort of Darwinian and dated in a sense that he really speaks to a particular thought around the idea of control or around the idea of prevalence. So these were the two things that just struck me rewatching this film at this point.
Yeah, there was something. There is something a little bit Darwinian. There is something that comes out there, especially, but I think it comes out in one of the characters more than the others. I think the character of Jean, for example, and that's the character that kills the hog at the end, is the most Darwinian of all, and he's the most troubled on some level too, I would say. René too, who's had to survive with survival of the fittest. I mean, I think Renier, by using Labyrinth, and we should remind ourselves too, I think this also makes it a little bit less offensive from the distance, maybe saying that Renier was actually using Labyrinth too to sort of play around with ideas and also critique things. In the end, all of the characters are suffering, and there's no resolution for any of them at the end, which sort of isn't so scientific on some level.
But to give him the voice of the narrator, like to actually give him control of the entire sort of narrative is in and of itself like kind of a slight surrender, or at least like a hat tip to his thought, even though he's trying to present it as a critical sort of approach. So,
but let's get to. I think anyone else want to say anything about Labyrinth, and then we can get to the film right now. We can look in.
I read somewhere, and I don't know how accurate it is. I read somewhere that Labyrinth's research and work had a lot of influence in the U.S. on like market research. So I don't know if that's so. Like that would be like a whole another angle, using that kind of evolutionary psychology for like the market aspect of things.
Labyrinth was all. From my research, he was advising the radical students of the 60s in France. He was he was an expert in anesthesiology. He was revolutionary in a chloropromazine for schizophrenia, and sort of beginning this issue of medicine for mental illness in the 50s. So he did so many different things, and then later on in life, he started writing about culture and society and behavior. And I think recently we don't have enough scientists. I don't know, but I think for me, it was welcoming to see him at least trying to write about these different issues, even if I might disagree with some of the reductionist things that came out in the film. I think it's difficult to put. I think all the films that I mentioned before and many others, it's always difficult to do a film about a philosopher. But let's move on, if you guys don't mind, to the film itself. The next slide, if we have time.
Last person, Shihab, I can see you raising your hand.
Oh, sorry.
Can I come in?
Sarabi has actually been raising her hand for a while. If we want to just go over the house rules in a bit, just to kind of remind people how we can manage the flow, it's really helpful if you can use the raise hand option,
Which is
so we can make sure we see you.
sorry, Shravi, you can come in?
Yeah. No, I just wanted to pick up on some of the things that have been spoken here. For me, really the interesting or the important thing about this film, but equally about the new wave, the French new wave and Rêve, is the idea of interrupting the narrative with something that doesn't belong. So, you are interrupting with a philosopher, but equally the philosopher is getting overwhelmed by the messiness of the narrative. And yes, it is, of course, the filmmaker deliberately creating the frame, as you said, a very aggressive male kind of control. But I think that really is the point of the narrative structure, where the constant interruption and the interplay between this voice of God, which is the philosopher, and the narrative and the character. So while the characters are being explained, they are equally provoking questions back at the philosopher, and that is one of the key kind of concerns, narrative concerns of the French New Wave, right? The suspicion of the narrative, of the protagonist, of the character, of a clean story, but equally suspicion of the treatise, of the philosopher, of the intellectual, because they were all intellectuals, but they were always questioning their own right to speak for. So it's that, and then in the middle of that is the interruption of those clips of silent cinema that come in, and which is possibly why that word comedic was used in that poster that beautiful poster that you brought up, right? Because in a sense, they are also then critiquing themselves. They are also laughing at themselves or mocking themselves. So there are these three things that are constantly interrupting each other, which does not really make this a film about the philosopher and his philosophy. It's as suspicious of the philosophy as it is of the story and the truth of the story and the truth of the characters. Just when you think you've got a sense of what the characters are going to do,
it cut off at the worst time.
yeah. So, and she just when you think you have now predicted, thanks to the philosopher, you have predicted what's going to happen, she runs to his house. First she goes to the island, then she writes him a letter, then she runs to the house, then she runs into the hunting ground, and then she just. So it's fascinating. It's the constant questioning and suspicion, and that comes from all the film Statues Also Die, right? That questioning of the treatise, that understanding. And for me, really, it's that interplay that becomes more important than either the philosopher or the story or the characters or those any one constructs that he's working with. And again, Truffaut loved doing it. Godard loved doing it. They love just when you are getting into the story, they yank you out of it by putting a clip from a silent cinema, and identify the silent cinema, so that your brain has to go somewhere else. You have to suspect even what you're feeling. When you feel you're going to cry when the guy tries to commit suicide, they will yank you out of that, because that's not the point. So for me, really, this film was such a delightful, and I thank you for a wonderful introduction to both the filmmaker and the film. It was such a wonderful unpacking of the many ideas within it. So I just wanted to put it out there. It's really, I think, not so much about the philosopher as about this interplay between the philosopher and cinema and real life people.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you said so many great things, and I think exactly, in the end, it's the film of Alain Renier and the story itself and the very unique way of doing a narrative. And I'd like to give credit to Jean-Valéry Grualt. I probably mispronounced my French, who was the screenwriter. He also was the screenwriter. Those of Gino, you mentioned the French New Wave. He was the screenwriter of the famous film 400 Blows, the famous François Truffaut film. And he really, when you watch the film twice or three times and stuff like that, you really see strong connections between Laboritz and some of the characters. Like Jean wants to write a novel about the sun that he never does, and we hear about the sun in the beginning of the film. So it's a good lesson in screenwriting too, almost, the film. But let's go to the next slide. Let's go into the film more, because I think we want to talk about the characters themselves. That's where we want to, if we can just go to this slide here. I mean, this is in the beginning of the film. To fugue or not to fugue. I just like playing this game, but we can skip it. It's almost like the whole film is a fugue. If you remember this one, this is the edifice that Laboritz is talking about, but it's also the edifice of cinema, right? In the beginning of the film, you hear like all these voices, and you have to put it all together to make a film, right? And perhaps cinema is life. And I actually believe that Renier, in the back of his mind, like Bazin, many of these French, actually believes something sacred in cinema, and that this image could be our personality, could be our world of social media and all these Instagrams and all these images and philosophies and concepts. And how do you make sense of it? And what if one goes wrong? And that's sort of the filmmaker starting to connect to our personality, right? And then you have the light going all over the place. And I use the word fugue because fugue in music is a composition that has many parts that are interweaving. Bach, those of you who know more about classical music, did that a lot. Short melodies with different interweaving parts. And fugue is also used in psychiatry as a loss of awareness of one's identity, often coupled with flight from one's usual environment. And I thought that was really an interesting way to see these scenes. And the music was also similar to a fugue. If we can go to the next slide quickly. How do we feel about Janine, Jean, and René? What do we feel about his characters? What do they do? What about their decisions? Who are they? All of them were famous French actors. Roger Pierre, Nicole Garcia became more famous later on. And all of you know Gérard Depardieu is the most famous one. But what do we feel about their characters in their film and the way the director and the screenwriter builds these characters? Anyone connect to any of the characters more? Any questions about them? Did you guys know? I mean, I just want to say hello to my uncle in America. Kifek Ammo. He's not watching anyway. I'm joking. But anyway, Kifek Ammo anyway. That wasn't the best joke. But my uncle's in America. But so what? Has nothing to do with our conversation. And what's the title of the film? My Uncle from America. Do we ever see an uncle from America?
No.
Never, right? Now, Jean tells us that my uncle from America left a secret treasure on that island, right? He imagined an American uncle, but he's not going to show up. There's no treasure. René has an uncle in America who he's warned died a bum in Chicago, right? That's in the script. And Janine, the woman character, also, I thought happiness was something I had coming to me from an uncle in America, right? And so when when he did this film, and Alain Grenier worked very closely with his scriptwriters. He wasn't like Truffaut that he would send a script and then wait 2 weeks and then make comments. No, he would work maybe 8 hours a day with the scriptwriter, and he was very much influenced by Beckett at the time, and he saw this uncle in America like waiting for Godot, waiting for something that never comes in all the characters, and they all have it. And I just, well, that's me. I'm sharing something that I put together about the characters and the title of the film. Each character from different classes, obviously, but what do you guys think? What do you think about these people that you encounter? Are they like us? Are they like you, me? Are they better?
I think.
Yes, I raised my hand. Well, I definitely think they are like us. And when you, Nezar, said earlier that maybe dominance is better translated as control, now that made much more sense to me, because there's also at one point they talk about anxiety, and generally in life, I mean, the human nature or needs to have control or security, and normally human beings feel the need to be in control of their circumstances, and when they lose that, you have anxiety. And I felt that this link and this state of being in anxiety did show quite well in the characters. I thought we saw it mostly in René's character, because René has been anxious and angry since childhood and until the last scene, to the point that he commits suicide, or he tries to commit suicide. And so we do see that anxiety in René, and even when he was called to I mean, since the beginning, when the companies were going to merge, since the beginning, he suspected he was being laid off. When he was called to Paris for a meeting, he thought it was to lay him off while they were offering him sort of promotion. And then at the end, he also collapsed. So he was constantly in a state of anxiety. And going back to social conditioning or the unconscious, we wonder as well whether his upbringing, or I guess the film tries to show that it's because of his upbringing that he remains so lacking in confidence and so anxious about his situation, because he was even deprived of education and he was reading books in secret. And so I thought that was a link that was very clear, and this discussion made it even clearer for me. So on René, we definitely see the anxiety. I thought we see it a little less with the other characters, especially with the female character. I thought Janine was so self-confident that she let go of her lover and she gave him back to the wife. Jean, I don't know. I mean, his level of anxiety, I don't have anything to say about his. I didn't think it was as obvious as in René's situation.
Yeah, one thing about, René's father said that he should be a priest, was always, putting him down. Yeah, I mean, Jean himself is probably, he sticks with, all of them rebel a little bit, but Jean, the bourgeois young man, is the one that sort of stays the course in the end. I mean, he wanted to be more creative. In the end, he doesn't write that creative book. He had fantasies about killing his own father. You sort of see the Oedipal complex there in the shooting scene. You see all these things. In the end, he's the most Darwinian of all. But he also had psychosomatic problems with the kidney. You see it in both men, Jean and René, really having stress taking over their lives. Janine, on the other hand, doesn't. One thing that I said in the beginning, Alain Grenier was very influenced by silent cinema, as were all the French New Wave, but him more. He was 10 years older than Godard and Truffaut. And each character is connected to a silent film character. So, for example, the female character is not connected to a female character. And here is where I think Alain Grenier is not, let's say, typically sexist of his generation or something like that. That's a longer discussion. But the heroes of Janine are Jean Marais and Sacha Guitry, these swashbuckling, very domineering men. The hero of Jean was a French actress that you see in the beginning of the film. Those of you who are French experts, Danielle Darieux, who is a well-known French actress, over 100 films, and she was even accused of being a collaborator with the Nazis, believe it or not. And then René's, when you see the flashbacks to silent cinema, you see Jean Gabin, one of the well-known French actors in history, many films from even Jean Renoir, who was the hard worker and stuff like that. And I think that was an also interesting way of developing character by having those flashbacks. And I don't think that many directors were doing those types of moves at the time. But okay, I have too much to say. I want to hear more from you guys.
Lama, you have your hand up as well on YouTube.
I just thought the idea of the three characters using My Uncle in America was just like an idea to justify their anxiety, their infidelity, their behaviors, whether they were happy or anxious or, with Janine, she was like overconfident, talking about doing whatever she did. Like this, the idea of having an uncle who's happy, who's this, he did this, I could do that, It was just an idea to relieve them from their behaviors, which was a reduction to the rat behavior, like they acted like the rats unconsciously, but this idea of the uncle just gave them this will to do whatever they did. This is how the idea of this My Uncle in America, this is how I felt, with all whatever you said before me.
No, exactly. It was just, and it's also a justification for the film. I mean, I wonder now, where would My Uncle come from? If America still has the same connotations for a French audience, I doubt it. Incidentally, I wanted to add, as we talk, the head of the textile company that Janine has a one-night stand with or an affair with at the end of the film, what does he say about America? He says, I've been there. America doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's an interesting quote from the head of a textile. And all throughout the film, we have montages of textiles. And textile, I think, is another metaphor for cinema and life, weaving. And this style that you see in all of René's film, like you see the sewing machine, you see scissors, you see a bicycle to talk, like the cinema reel. All of these are little montage things that are very well placed. And sometimes when watching the film the first time, you don't feel it. It's in your unconscious that it works. But he was also, the French New Wave were also very influenced by the Soviet filmmakers who like to put in those, I'm forgetting the film term, but undiegetic or intercuts or something like that. Yeah. But other comments about the characters, anything else that you know? Yeah.
I myself. On the point of the metaphor of the uncle, the American uncle, and back to your point, Nezar, about how you see him that is similar to Godot in Beckett's play. Do you think in that regard this plays more, or it's more connected to the behavior of what they call it, the fourth behavior, the behavior of inhibition?
Yes.
In that respect, and anxiety, rather than the confrontation or fight or flight and the rest, it's toward the inhibition of certain, the characters that took this behavior. Here, where you see it coming as a Godot, that they didn't take an action or they were inhibiting their reactions.
Yeah, I think there is an echo of Samuel Beckett, because Samuel Beckett, like, you have lines like, to play or not to play, should I go on, shouldn't I go on, I don't know what to do, and you have this sense of anxiety about not knowing what you should do. And I think that this is something that really echoed for me. It echoes for my life now and echoed in the film. So I feel I do think there's a direct connection. Incidentally, in Janine's room, there is a picture of Samuel Beckett. And so I think it plays very prominently in this film, in this thing. And I think the character of Janine is quite interesting. Pays credence to the French Jews. Her father is a member of the Communist Party. She recites a very famous French poem. Those of you that love poetry, by Paul Éluard at the table, Liberté, j'écris ton nom. And so there are a lot. The script was really well done because a lot of the little points connect to the fabric of where each character comes from and a background. Okay, sorry. Hope I responded to you, Badia, but sometimes I get carried away too. So
I don't know, Shihab, if you want to take the word. I know that you wanted to speak since a while.
I think that that moment has passed, but I'll just add something quick. A quick thought about the characters is I like the way everybody screwed everybody else over. Whether it's Janine screwing her friend over to get the role, or all of the ministry folks screwing each other over in terms of getting them the job and then replacing the job, and everybody kind of screwing their wives over. I just enjoyed that aspect. I love this film, by the way. Thank you so much for bringing it to us.
Yeah, everybody screws everyone over. That's so true. Okay, thank you, Shahab. Thank you. Other comments, other things about the characters, other things that you noticed about the scripts and stuff like that.
I mean, the one thing that just kept playing in the background of my mind is Leonard Cohen's "Waiting for a Miracle to Come." It's just this idea of, this better future, this possibility, this aha moment, this, better land, this new place, that will deliver you from evil, that will, somehow, be the answer to your woes or your insatiable ambitions. So, and deliver you to the world, in the case of, of the bourgeois character. I think those are things that just kept ringing true, is this sort of insatiability and this impatience, this sort of almost I think insufferable or even privileged take on their circumstances, whether it was Janine fleeing her her familial cocoon, whether it was him and his sort of aspiration to fulfill his intellectual persona, whether it was it was escaping a past that that he knew in the case of the the factory, all these different things that that just pointed to this idea of of the metaphor of America, as a as a stepping stone, as a point of arrival, and it just and really facing disappointment at every turn.
I think that's so profound, because I think we're still in that moment when we still have beliefs in certain types of transcendence or certain types of progress or certain types of liberation, even the way the whole COVID rhetoric of, we have so much time, we can write 6 novels on a grain of sand, we can do this, we can do that, you can, and I think it's a lot of pressure on us. You should be supporting philanthropy, you should be doing this, and I think, I don't know, at least that's, when you were talking, Husseina, that was echoing, I think some of those that I don't know if that's what you meant, but that's some of the feelings that I was getting when you talked. Other comments about? I mean, I think, but
I have Nezar, just commenting about Mon Oncle d'Amérique and the different interpretations. I had just moved to the States in 1980. And it's really interesting to see this film now. I hadn't seen the film before. Obviously, though, knew the actors and knew about the film. But my experience in the early 80s in the US was, and this is in California, was a real infatuation with everything French.
Yeah.
You know, everybody I knew in college wanted to go study abroad in France. I even applied to go study abroad in Paris, and they told me, you're already abroad. You know, you just stay put. French cooking was, Julia Child. Oh, that was the 70s. So joined the gourmet club. It was all about French cooking. I wanted to go to the Cordon Bleu when I graduated from college. Like it was everybody. It was like the aspiration at the time. So it's interesting to see that kind of, thinking of America as that other place, or and I saw the other side of it.
You're right that France also occupied a big part of American intellectual thought. You see anyone who's gone to academia or masters is pretty much influenced by this type of French thinking. Not that we have to agree with it. We don't have to agree with Labourite or even Alain Renier's way.
But it was very dominant. I guess for me, coming from the Middle East, then I was surprised how dominant it was in the U.S. And then there's a scene in the film, I forget which. There's a little kid studying, and he's talking about how the white race is supreme.
Right.
And I remember that, the core curriculum at Stanford was Western civilization. It was all about Western civilization. There were no other civilizations that was at the core. And so, it brought back those references for me that were kind of foundational in my education that I'm still unpacking.
Yeah, we're all still unpacking those. The film says a lot about education. That scene is quite powerful because those books did actually exist. And to this day, I mean, it's scary. To this day, these things are not going away, not just in the U.S., but in many places. So it's a good point. Other comments about the characters? Let's look at some slides. I think they're just to switch pace here a little bit. Unless someone had some. Can we look at the next slides? Or that's Janine there, Nicole Garcia. The mice, are we different than animals? I mean, do you think, some people, was it abusive to use this? Did he abuse them? I mean, what do we think about the use of animals and to understand humans? Are we different than animals? I mean, that's still a question, a big question. We can go to the next slides. That's Roger Pierre and Depardieu, and here is the poster in Janine's room that has all the French actors, famous ones. You can see all of them sort of there, but the big ones on the poster, you can see they've been in the unconscious of the characters' minds, and it grows on you as the film goes. In the beginning, I didn't like it. I thought it was just quirky, but then I got to realize that it actually is so much a part of how we think. Okay. Any other? My last question is basically this one: is what is Renier's statement as a filmmaker? I'm going to come out with a couple of things, and then I'll open the floor. I'll try to be quick. I don't want to talk too much. I think that Renier did about 8 hours of interviews with Labourite, and he's the one who decided to be reductionist. He ends the film. We can move to the next slide. He ends the film on this shot, and before this shot, we have a steady moving camera across the terrain. Did we know where the terrain was? Did we all know that it was the Bronx, New York? No. My first impression is like, oh, is this war-torn Berlin? I didn't know, and then I figured out it was the Bronx after a little bit. We have this very famous trompe l'oeil in French, this trick of the eye, let's say. And I think this, for me, this shot here and the shot of the personalities in Renier is saying that human perspective is always flawed a little bit, because as the camera moves in, we see that it's lots of bricks, it's not a forest, it's a trick of the eye. And I feel that Renier's statement at the end of this film, if there is a statement, right? I think Renier always, as a filmmaker, like someone said, wanted to leave things open for us to develop our own view, but that we are not animals, actually. We are not like the mice. We are more responsible and accountable because we have memory. I think he was always trying to put this in the characters themselves. And I think Renier's move throughout the film, in many parts, are questioning Laborie sometimes, showing that there's many layers of human personality, and that cinema itself is a way of entering into, or maybe keying up, or bringing out the many complicated perspectives of that unconscious. And those of you who took Psychology 101, it's the iceberg underneath the water. But I think Renier's moves as a filmmaker, especially this final scene and the way that he puts up different montages, is saying something a little bit different than Laborie, that human nature is not just the mice fighting each other. So in the end, I feel that the final statement of this film isn't Laborie, it is Renier, as a filmmaker, putting it all together, and not telling us how to think at the end. This is a very eerie ending, as the French New Wave do. Okay, that's my super quick statement. That's my final slide. But I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think about the actual filmmaking, or if there was a final message in this film? Any comments about that last shot? Okay.
You kept asking us during the session, what's the difference between us and animals? In my opinion, there is only one difference, and it's communication. Human beings are capable of communicating in a much better way than animals, and that's what we are doing at the moment. And by communicating, you can learn. So our ability to learn grew faster than animals. If one day animals can communicate, then they can rule the world.
Excellent. Next. Who else wants to speak, or someone?
I wanted to speak. I'm just trying to find his mute, or to unmute him. Sorry. There you are.
I don't know if I have a big statement about the director's meaning, but one of the most powerful things I felt I took away from it was the notion and the role of inhibitions, and all of the fallout and the consequences that arise from that. And I think for me, alongside dominance, which I do question whether that how accurately that was translated, or how much nuance was brought across in the film from Laborie's books. But the idea of inhibitions and just what a big part of human nature that is, and to me, I think that's one of the most powerful ideas I've taken from this, that I feel I'm going to be exploring a little bit more in my own life.
Great.
But yeah, you wanted to speak as well?
Yes. I wanted to reflect. I was reflecting on the difference between animal and human beings in terms of communication. Maybe it's addressing more complex issues, the ability of addressing more complex issues. I wouldn't say better or worse than animal, but the ability of addressing more complex issues in our communication, and the ability to reflect. Although in the movie he kept playing with the idea of memory, and of unconsciousness and how it comes into play with our lives. I think again the inhibition part plays at a contrast also with expression and with the ability to communication. If we're just talking about communication, the essence of communication is expressing yourself and reaching the other, where inhibition as well seems at the other opposite of that. It's just some thoughts that kept coming hearing you.
Yeah, no, agreed. Other comments, about is there a vision of the director? Are there things that he did as a filmmaker, not just the characters also? I guess what types of shots did he select? How did he create a rhythm in order to do something? I can give you a quote if you want. I mean, Renier said this in an interview in French. What I'm trying to offer in Mon Oncle d'Amérique are the elements, each one as distinct as possible, that can allow everyone to build the film they want and reconstruct themselves while confronting the film. And if possible, he goes, if possible, enjoy themselves at the same time. That's and that's always Renier never liked to give an answer about his film. That's as close as you're going to get. And I think he always wanted to create open-ended films to let us go home and maybe, like Shahab or Badia said, to think about different elements, echoes of different ideas. The last slide that we had there, we showed the heart. It's a heart, but it's actually a plastic heart. It came from another film that he did. It showed in the El Sidr Environmental Film Festival about plastics, actually. And that's what begins the film. As the philosopher is speaking and says being is only being or something like that, we see the human heart, bum, 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 bump. And I thought that was also like a fugue, like the song, something contrapuntal, different melodies going on at the same time. And I thought that's another thing that Renier does in his filmmaking. He's able to layer things. But other opinions, other things that you remembered, a shot, a color, a light.
Yes. Yeah, thanks. One thing that caught my attention, and Badia mentioned this earlier, the fact that the characters seem as if they are rats in an experiment. And that's exactly how I felt when I was watching the film. What René has done is that he has portrayed the characters as if they are the subject of an experiment or the object of an experiment. And by doing that, or the way he did that, we ended up sort of not having empathy or not being able to relate with the characters because they become objects of an experiment. It's as if we objectified them, and so we forget about the human dimension. And what happens is that these people are suffering, and especially we'll see a lot of suffering with René. And what happens when you objectify, when you present the characters in this manner, is that as a viewer, you sort of cannot relate or understand the suffering, while in fact these are all human beings, and what they are going through, although they seem as experiments and an experiment of certain theories, in fact there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of suffering. And I thought that was fascinating, and I'm curious to know what you think, Nezar, I'm assuming this was intentional, and if this was intentional, what is the idea? Is the idea that the whole purpose is to experiment the theories? Is it on purpose that the viewer would be alienated or cannot relate to the characters?
Yeah, I think you're right. There was a distance that you felt, not allowing us to have empathy. maybe empathy only started for me personally by the end of the film. And I think Renier on purpose created that distance so that, just like, when you do mindfulness and therapy and stuff like that, and you have to detach from the moment so you can see yourself. And I think there was something I don't think he was doing that in the way that the modern world of therapy and all these things are there. But I think that it was on purpose to be detached. But at the same time, for me, the final shot got to me. The final shot really moved me about what he was trying to say about human experience, that we don't see everything, that things appear not as they are. And to be aware of that is so important. And that's what I felt, I don't know, that struck me in a very strong way. And then when I went back to do research, I found that the original title of the film was, did anyone find this? It was The Sleepwalkers. Because Renier wanted to say that we're all sleepwalking and we need to really figure out how to be more awake, more aware of ourselves. And I think that's why he was influenced by Labourite, saying we need to be more aware of how our mind and how our issue of dominance works. So I'm not sure if I answered you perfectly, Nairi. I tried. But I think there are certain moves in the film too that the music, the flash, I don't know, they're not flashbacks, but they're the flash towards cinema also create this cinematic emotion that we all have. Like, I don't know, when you're running, do you think that you're Rocky Balboa? Do you think that you're a man or woman in your imagination of different film characters? I go back and forth between male and female. The Jean's character that he looks back on as a female actor. So I think also that was another element that only started working at the end of the film for me, at least this viewing. Other comments?
I think, Nezar, a continuity to the Labourite statement, if we are not aware of our thoughts and we're not present or mindful of these thoughts, then nothing will change, right? There is no change that could take place. I think what gave the impression, he did it on purpose in terms of directing Renier, this detachment, which he established it from the start. When the movie started, I felt first as if, in part, I was watching a scientific documentary, to be exact. On one hand, and the way he described the character, he introduced each character, as if, in a very systematic, detached way. He has this, he studied this, he's working this, and he has, for example, ulcer. So even the medical condition. So
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. So yeah. But then he challenges this, because even when he's doing the biography of Labourite says, no, that's not it. That's not all. Not only was I born in Hanoi, there's also this. And so there is a playfulness also from the very beginning of the film to challenge our normal ways of understanding biography. I was born here. My father was this. And I felt that also, now that's easy to say that looking back perhaps too. Sorry to cut you off, Badia, but you got me thinking.
No, not at all. It does come into display, but I felt that this established the detachment. So when we moved into the actual acting or actually seeing the characters, we didn't feel, at least I didn't feel, that I'm part of the story from the start, and I got emotionally involved. I kept seeing it from the eye, of someone at a distance observing these characters, because the script or the dissertation, I should call it, was so heavy in certain parts, about the human minds, the evolution of the human minds. The plants are we like, the seaweed in its basic form of existence, or are we like animal, or we different from them later on in terms of characters? So I kept seeing it from that perspective as a social experiment.
Yes, it was like a social. I mean, definitely like a social experiment. Other comments about anything that's been said. About the final scene. Did anyone know that it was the Bronx? And it's a well-known. I'm forgetting the American artist Alan something that did it. Yeah, it's the film ends on it's sort of a very eerie ending. And I guess the ending really worked for me, maybe just as much as the whole film. The way it closed in, and because that ending connects back to the building blocks that the film begins on, but yet it's on a wall in the Bronx, and it's in America. That is perhaps the Godot moment. The Uncle in America is that trick of an eye, that forest that's not a forest, that's actually bricks that have been painted by a graffiti artist. And I felt that that did something to my reading. Yeah. Any other comments from you guys? I don't know how long. I mean, what else? There's.
I mean, Nezar, I just want to. I mean, it is way past the time that you've very generously, allotted to us, for this discussion, and we'd love to go on for much further. This has been a great sort of pivot from the sort of the trilogy of the urban rural experiences that we've been working with in the past in the first CineTalk series, but I do want to end with a playful kind of question to you, because you started us off with a game, and and with this particular film, you posed the question and kind of moved on from it, and I wonder if if we had to do a hypothetical reading of what a Grenier take on our current condition, and our current, absurdity, and our, sort of grappling with authority, and grappling with, with anxiety and collective sort of panic, and all these different concepts that are coming at us at an unprecedented sort of rate of information and of reckoning. What would a film by Alain Resnais look like today? How would he, perhaps, grapple with this moment?
Yeah, there's no value to that question. It's the ultimate question. How would he express the inexpressible? I think we're still working on that. The deluge, the flood of anxieties that we have today, I would say are more. And I think that the inhibitions, the little inhibitions that we have, perhaps are more. Perhaps there's more awareness too. There's more communication, and there's so many different types of communication. So some of the latest filmmakers are showing all these layers of communication, even on our, on the binge watching that we do on Netflix or the other series, whether you're on Amazon or you're HBO, Chernobyl, whatever you binge on, but it's showing all these new layers of communication that we have, and so I think Resnais would be very playful with how we communicate on the internet, on WhatsApp, on all these levels. I mean, there are some filmmakers like I don't know why I'm thinking of her, but she's an American independent, Miranda July, right? Anyway, I mean, she plays a lot with the layers of communicating on the internet and stuff like that. So I think there would be a lot of playfulness with all the modes of communication. But I also think Resnais would always move to the absurd on some level. I think we're always, the human life itself is always creating an Uncle in America. Even when we get beyond the Uncle in America and we know the Uncle in America is not there, there's another Uncle in America waiting for us. I think we might need that to survive. And that's not bad. Maybe that's what storytelling is. And that's the final word of the film, is that Resnais would still show that life is like textiles, like clothes, is weaving in weird ways. Maybe not linear weaving, but a weaving that always is moving us. And different types of storytelling. So I think he would be so playful with different types of storytelling still.
You make me think of the opening of one of my favorite opening line to a book is John Didion's "We Tell Ourselves Stories in Order to Live," and perhaps that's our key to survival, in this time. And I think this is why we were actually inspired to do this series of CineTalks and really have a deep dive. And we've always been about stories, we've always been about sharing them on the big screen, but really about this idea of of telling them back to ourselves and telling them amongst each other. So I really appreciate you taking the time to help us go through that process.
No, thank you guys. Thanks everyone for listening to me, for being part of this. I hope it was interactive enough. There's always so much to say about a film. I began it with that little performance because cinema, we miss the performance of going to the cinema, especially a place like Cinema Aqil that feels like a home. And it's been such an important thing in UAE for a lot of us to have it here. So thank you again. I hope we all meet in the cinema and have more discussions like this. I think this is great. But for me, it's still early. So yeah, please, thank you for taking your time to get back to Cinema Aqil. I was shocked when I saw people were going to Vox Cinema today. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening to me. I hope my mom is still listening. So thank you for everything. Thank you for taking me to film since I was a little kid. And thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Do check out Nezar's books. Do join us for the next few series of CineTalks. We'll be announcing them as they come along. Surabi Sharma, who's with us here today, will be leading a discussion as well. So stay tuned for that. And I hope you all stay safe and well. And yeah, have a wonderful night. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Take care.